If you've ever seen a baker with a sheet of pastry that, somehow rises into 1,000 golden layers, you probably feel two things:
Ah,
awe and just intense intimidation.
right. Today, we're trying to conquer one of the most, well, notoriously difficult baking projects out there. Classic French pâté feuilleté by taking the ultimate shortcut.
We're diving deep into rough puff pastry. You might also hear it called blitz puff.
Blitz puff.
And
What?
traditional puff pastry is legendary. It takes days, days of rolling, chilling, folding, all to get those perfect layers.
Exactly.
But our sources today, from Mon Petit Four all the way to King Arthur, they promise that rough puff can deliver, say, 90% of that flaky glory in maybe 10% of the time.
And that is our mission today. We've got sources from super fast bakers like Izzy Hossack, more structured chefs like Gordon Ramsay, and then amazing home bakers like Joe Wheatley and Aaron McDowell. We're going to synthesize all their methods, even the conflicting ones.
Oh, there are a few of those. Yeah, like the great folding conflict.
Yeah.
And our goal is to find the universal rules and the best shortcuts for you.
The whole idea here is simplified lamination. We're creating those layers of fat and dough just faster.
So you're skipping the long chilling time.
Exactly. You trade patience for precision. The layers have to be built quickly, intentionally, because those flakes, the ones that puff up so dramatically in the oven,
Yeah.
they're powered by steam. And if that butter melts, your steam engine just dies.
Okay, let's unpack that. Let's start with the basics. Segment one, the essential ingredients and this rule of absolute cold.
The basics are really simple. All-purpose flour, salt, cold unsalted butter, and ice-cold water. That's the foundation, and pretty much every recipe agrees on that.
But right after flour, that's where the choices begin.
That's where it gets interesting, yeah. And the choices you make dramatically change the final flake.
So I found this fascinating split right away on the fat content. A lot of modern recipes, like one from Olive Magazine, they just stick to 100% cold, unsalted butter.
Right.
But then you have these older school methods that bring in lard. Why is lard still in the conversation?
Well, this gets into the science of melt points. Butter is about 80% fat, 20% water, and milk solids.
Okay.
It melts at a lower temperature than lard, which is 100% fat, and has a much higher melting point.
Ah, so it stays solid for longer.
Exactly. So bakers like Joe Wheatley, who suggest using a 50-50 combo, they know that the lard will stay solid longer in the oven. This gives the dough structure more time to set before the fat totally renders.
And you get a taller puff.
A taller, more shattering flake, yeah.
Okay.
You trade some of that rich, buttery flavor for better texture and stability.
So, wait, if you live in a really warm kitchen, using some lard might actually be a critical shortcut.
It's
Right?
basically a thermal insurance policy, exactly.
Oh.
And speaking of small details that make a huge difference, you found that mysterious addition of acid.
Yes. A teaspoon of lemon juice, or half a teaspoon of lime juice, or even white vinegar. But so many sources just ignore it. Why? What's it doing in there?
The acid is all about managing gluten development.
Right, you don't want it to be chewy.
You don't. Puff pastry is about delicate layers, not chewiness. When you add a little acid, it actually tenderizes the dough by slowing down the formation of those tough gluten strands.
Which would make it easier to roll out.
So much easier. The dough doesn't fight you, it doesn't snap back and, expose the butter.
That makes perfect sense. You need it to be elastic enough to stretch over the butter,
Yeah.
but not so strong that it becomes like bread dough.
Right. It's a subtle assist. But whether you use lard or acid or just plain butter, there's one rule that every single source agrees on.
The one constant.
The absolute consensus is cold is gold.
It's non-negotiable.
It is. Every ingredient, especially the butter and the water, has to be ice cold. Chad Simpson at Cup of Yum explains that if the butter warms up, it just gets absorbed by the flour.
It stops being a layer.
It stops being a discrete layer, and you get a dense, shortbread-like texture. No layers.
And we're working fast, so we have to manage the heat from our own hands. Joe Wheatley had that brilliant tip
Oh, I love that word.
about keeping the wrapper on the butter while you're grating it.
Just to stop your own body heat from starting the disaster before you even begin. It shows you the level of vigilance you need.
It really drives home that your warm kitchen, your warm hands, they're the #1 enemy of rough puff.
Absolutely.
Okay, thermal integrity achieved. Can we get to segment 2? Initial mixing. Shards versus breadcrumbs. This is where we deliberately stop mixing earlier than we would for, say, a pie crust.
Precisely. For a pie crust, you want fat the size of small peas or breadcrumbs. For rough puff, you have to leave large visible pieces, shards of fat,
Why so big?
because those big chunks are going to become your first massive, isolated layers of pure fat when you start rolling.
And we saw two main ways to do this, method A, cubing and cutting.
Yep, the old reliable. You cut cold butter into cubes, ½ inch, maybe even a full inch, and then just roughly chop them into the flour with a knife or pastry cutter.
The key being roughly,
The key is to stop almost immediately. The dough should look shaggy, floury, and really chunky. You cannot overwork it.
then there's method B, the speed technique, grating.
Yeah, Joe Wheatley suggests coarsely grating the fat right into the flour. Others, like Ursula at Cup of Yum, say to use grated frozen butter.
Frozen seems safer.
It is, because grating creates a huge surface area, which is great for speed, but it also means it melts faster. That's the trade-off.
Right.
That's why some bakers, like Izzy Hossack, do a hybrid thing. She mixes in some cubed butter first, then scatters grated frozen butter on during the folding stage.
Oh, that's clever. So you're adding pre-grated fat as you build the layers.
It's a great hack.
But when you've got these big, hard shards of butter and you go to add the water, doesn't that make the dough incredibly hard to bring together?
That is a great question, and it's why you have to be so careful with the hydration. You add the ice-cold water just a tablespoon at a time, just enough for the shaggy mass to start holding together.
So you're gathering the dough, not kneading it.
Exactly. Any kneading will develop too much gluten, making it tough. But worse, it starts smearing those butter shards we worked so hard to keep separate. The final dough should barely hold its shape.
Stiff and rough.
Very stiff and rough. And then it gets its first mandatory chill, usually about 30 minutes, just so the gluten can relax a bit before the real work begins.
Which brings us to segment 3, the heart of this deep dive, the folding frenzy.
This is where the magic happens.
Okay.
This is the lamination, the turning, where we create hundreds of layers of butter and dough.
And when you roll it thin and fold it, you're doubling or tripling the layers in one move.
In one swift move.
The two main folding techniques seem pretty consistent. First, the classic letter fold.
That's the most common one. You roll the dough into a long rectangle, about 3 times as long as it is wide. Fold the top third down to the center,
Like a letter?
and the bottom third up and over. Exactly. Then, and this is crucial, you turn the dough 90 degrees before you roll again to keep the layers even.
And then there's the book fold.
The book fold is a speed technique. Instead of thirds, you fold both short edges in to meet at the center, then you fold the whole thing in half like a closed book.
So it creates more layers faster.
4 layers in one turn. It's incredibly efficient, but the pastry can be a bit thicker. King Arthur actually suggests a mix. 1 letter fold, then 2 book folds.
Okay, now we're at the core conflict for anyone trying this at home.
Yeah.
The fold count. This is where the recipes just go in completely different directions.
They really do. In the minimum effort camp, you have bakers like Izzy Hossack, who suggest only 3 or 4 folds total. Their whole philosophy is about working super, super fast.
But then you have the other end of the spectrum. Cup of Yum asks for 5 total folds, and Olive Magazine specifies 6. 6 rolls and folds.
And 6 folds is exponentially more layers than 3. If you do a simple letter fold 6 times, you get over 700 layers.
Wow.
3 times, you get 27. The difference in the potential puff is just massive.
So the real insight here isn't just the number, it's the trade-off. You're balancing maximum puff potential against the risk of the butter melting.
Exactly. And that leads directly to the chilling time tensions. If you're doing the minimum folds, Izzy Hossack says you can often do all 3 with no chilling in between.
So long as you're fast.
As long as you're fast and the butter isn't seeping out.
But if you go for the 6-fold maximum, you can't skip the chilling. Bossy and Aaron McDowell suggest chilling for 15 to 30 minutes between each fold.
And that takes your prep time from maybe 20 minutes to over an hour and a half.
That's a huge difference. So why the chill? Is it just for the butter?
It's for 2 things. First, yes, it chills the butter. But second, and maybe more importantly, it lets the gluten relax.
Ah, so it doesn't fight back.
Right. If you try to roll dough that's too tight, it just snaps back and you risk tearing it and exposing the butter.
So it's more about relaxation than deep freezing the fat.
Unless your kitchen is really hot, yes. That's why King Arthur suggests splitting the difference. Only chill for 5 or 10 minutes if the dough actively resists you.
Okay, so the practical advice for you listening is, if you want a quick, flaky base for a tart, 3 quick folds is probably perfect.
Absolutely. But if you're aiming for a sky-high croissant or a Napoleon, you just have to commit to 5 or 6 folds and embrace the chilling process. The max fold count is an ambition, not a necessity.
That makes the choice much clearer. So now, we've got this beautiful laminated dough. Let's talk about the payoff in segment 4, practical logistics, uses, and storage.
The versatility of Rough Puff is its superpower. It can be used for almost anything the classic version is used for.
We're talking sweet things like turnovers, tarts, those little pinwheel cookies called palmiers, or savory staples like pot pies and savory braids. Because we did it so quickly, using Rough Puff for a weeknight dinner suddenly seems totally possible.
And when you bake it, you want a hot oven, typically between 350 and 400 degrees Fahrenheit. You want to hit it with that heat to get the steam engine to fire before the butter leaks out.
And since the work is so focused, it really pays off to make a big batch. We saw recipes from 400 grams all the way up to King Arthur's huge 939 grams.
Making a big batch is the smart move. Wrap it tightly. It'll keep in the fridge for up to 3 days. But more importantly, it freezes beautifully.
How long?
Up to 3 months if it's wrapped properly. So you do one intense blitz session, and you've got amazing pastry ready to go for weeks.
That is fantastic. Now, there's one absolutely crucial tip for handling the leftovers. The trimmings. It comes from Gordon Ramsay, and it separates the pros from the amateurs.
This is so important for getting the most out of your dough when you cut off the excess edges from shaping your pastries.
Which you always have.
You will always have trimmings. You must stack those pieces on top of each other.
And what happens if you forget and just, scrunch them into a ball?
If you ball them up, you instantly destroy the hundreds of layers you just spent an hour creating. You just completely mash the dough and butter together.
And when you re-roll it?
It bakes up dense and tough. But if you stack the scraps, you preserve that laminated structure. After a quick chill, you can re-roll them for a second use.
That's the kind of tip that makes this whole deep dive worth it.
It's the difference between a usable second chance and just failure. The whole process is designed to be efficient.
So when we look at this whole shortcut showdown, the big takeaway is clear. Rough Puff is a high-speed trade-off. You're trading days of chilling for a very focused, rapid folding process. And the one goal is relentless thermal management. You have to keep that butter cold and separate.
And that brings us right back to the biggest conflict, the number of folds. We've seen that 3 is often good enough, but 6 gives you that theoretically perfect result.
Right.
But if you have to spend an extra hour chilling between those 6 folds, it's because your kitchen's temperature is fighting you. Which raises a really interesting question.
Yeah.
If you're aiming for true perfection, is the secret really the sheer number of layers you create? Or is success actually determined by how flawlessly you manage the environment, ensuring the butter never warms up? Even if that means stopping at a perfect 3 layers.
That's the real challenge. 3 perfect cold layers might just outperform 6 smushed warm ones. The environment. It might be the ultimate expert.
Go and find out.
Indeed. We encourage you to grab your ingredients, maybe turn the AC down low, and try the Blitz Puff yourselves. See if 3 disciplined, quick folds give you a better result than 6 folds that needed a bunch of desperate chilling breaks. Let us know which side of the fold conflict wins in your kitchen.